Welcome back. So last summer, we gave you a tragic and just absolutely terrible story about the death of Fort Hood specialist Vanessa Guillen. She is 20 years old. She served in the United States Army. She was stationed at Fort Hood in Guillén, Texas, when she was murdered and dismembered by two fellow soldiers. This week, the commemoration of her memory, essentially, there was a vigil held for her. This was reporting earlier this week.
Meanwhile, exactly 1 year ago, Vanessa Guillen, an Army soldier from Houston, vanished while stationed at Fort Hood. Her body was found 2 months later. On the anniversary of her disappearance, her family was in our nation's capital. They are pushing for legislation to change how reports of sexual harassment and assault are investigated in the military. Here in her hometown, a vigil was held to honor her life and call for justice in her death. KPRC2's Jonathan Martinez joining us live now in Southeast Houston, where dozens gathered this evening. Jonathan?
Yeah, Dominique, it was a very emotional night for a lot of people who showed up to this mural for Vanessa Guillen. They were here for a candlelight vigil. In fact, you can see some of those candles remain lit. They were all here to support one another and pay tribute.
1 year to the day Fort Hood soldier Vanessa Guillen was killed, about 100 people gathered at a mural in Southeast Houston to remember her.
Like everyone in Houston, we sort of made her a part of our family.
She's like a strong woman.
I'm fighting today, I'll fight tomorrow, and I'll fight every day till we get justice for Vanessa Guillen.
By candlelight, through song and prayer, they all showed up to support Guillen's family and keep her memory alive.
People haven't forgot our dear friend.
We know that other people haven't given up on us, and we will never give up on Vanessa.
I just want to thank everyone for being out there today.
Guillen's family joined the vigil by phone to thank supporters. They're still in Washington, D.C., where another vigil for Vanessa was held.
The least we can do for her is create change. Positive change for others.
Even though a year has passed, Guillen's family and friends are still seeking justice and calling for change of how sexual harassment and assault reports are investigated by the military.
Every other soldier that's sexually assaulted and goes through that pain and not able to speak up, we want to be their voice.
We're just pretty much here so the family knows that we are still with them as long as they keep fighting. I mean, we will all keep fighting with them.
Back out of here live hours after that vigil has already wrapped up. People are still showing up to lay out candles here for the vigil of Vanessa Guillen. We also know that her family said that this time next Friday they will plan to hold another vigil right here in the same spot. We are reporting live from Southeast Houston. I'm Jonathan Martinez, KPRC 2 News.
Once again, that was reporting earlier this week about that vigil held just a year after Vanessa Guillen's death. According to the Texas Tribune, quote, just a year after her death, her family is still fighting for justice. They say the family and advocates are saying that not enough has changed in the military just a year after Vanessa's death. It says here, quote, Army Specialist Vanessa Guillen's murder at Fort Hill in Guillén last year exposed a pattern of violence and abuse against soldiers at the United States military's largest active duty base and sparked national outrage over federal officials' handling of sexual harassment and non-combat deaths. Guillen told her family that she was being sexually harassed by several fellow soldiers at Fort Hood before she went missing, which happened over 1 year ago, Thursday. In the year since her death, lawmakers have filed bills aimed at strengthening responses to sexual harassment, and the military has launched investigations into the base's culture. 14 U.S. Army leaders, including commanders and other leaders at Fort Hood, were fired or suspended. But even as the U.S. Army rolls out new policies, including some announced last week, her family, advocates, and lawmakers are still calling for more changes to how military officials respond to sexual harassment and violence against soldiers. Quote, my frustration, my anger is the same because it's not fair. My sister was murdered the way she was. According to Vanessa Guillen's 17-year-old sister, Lupe Guillén, said at a press conference Tuesday, quote, she had to be murdered for everyone to realize all of these issues. This has happened for decades. End quote. The Secretary of the Army acknowledged during a press conference in August that the base had, quote, the most cases for sexual assault and harassment and murders for our entire formation of the U.S. Army. At least 159 Fort Hood soldiers died out of combat between 2016 and last year, including 7 homicides and 71 suicides, according to an analysis by the New York Times. Vanessa Guillen was 20 years old when she was bludgeoned to death in an armory room where she worked. Her body was carried away, mutilated, and buried in a shallow grave nearby. It took 2 weeks for investigators to find her body, end quote. Once again, reporting from the Texas Tribune there. In the recent days, there has been reporting, as of course the new Secretary of Defense is Secretary Lloyd Austin. There has been new reporting essentially about him stamping out sexual harassment in the United States military. He mentioned that at his confirmation hearing. He is actively doing that right now. According to a panel that has just released their investigative report on this, they say that essentially we should take issues and matters like sexual harassment and sexual assault out of the commander's hands. Perhaps let an independent investigatory committee essentially investigate that. So that is an interesting development in this case. Once again, the fight for Vanessa Guillen, the fight for justice in this case, still continues right now. We are also watching more developments on this story and many others about missing soldiers. Earlier this week, we got to see the Vanessa Guillen Gate unveiled at Fort Hood. That was promised by Fort Hood commanders and leadership. We got to see it earlier this week. Just developments in this case. Once again, Vanessa Guillen, 20 years old. 20 years old. We'll be right back.